Hey everyone, I thought I'd do something a little bit different. So what I wanted to do is say you have a new iPad Air in this case, you're getting one for someone, you have someone that you know has one, or you just have one yourself. And what you want to do is you want to deal with covering it up and taking care of it. So the obvious choice is the Apple and Smart Cover. It does a good job of providing a support system, a way that you can, hold it one way or the other and be able to deal with it. But what if, like me for instance, you really want to use this thing all the time like a laptop, but you don't want to have to tap on the glass as a keyboard all the time? Then in that case you want the keyboard. So the first and easiest choice is Apple Bluetooth keyboard. So this thing will pair up very easily with the iPad. I've used this particular one with everything from the iPad 1 all the way up through the iPad Air. Pairs up, has great keys, full-size keyboard. It's actually originally bought this as an external keyboard for a MacBook. And so obviously to do this, you just have a keyboard, so you still have to deal with the iPad itself. So your two choices there are either to just kind of have it stand up like that, or you can then take something like a stand. In this case, this is something by iKey Multimedia, which is called it's the iClip Studio stand. You put that together, take this, stick it on there, and suddenly you have a stable, because using this cover is not very stable. So you have this ultra stable, does a good job. So that's one first solution. That'll provide you a keyboard, but really it ends up being kind of a desktop companion in that case. The next thing, which is along the same lines, is something that I've used quite a bit, which is from Logitech, and it is their external Bluetooth keyboard. So this comes in a sort of a case like this. You've got the Bluetooth keyboard, again full-size keys, and a bunch of functionality along there, and then built into this case is something that flips together, becomes similarly a stand. But like before, what I would tend to do is I would, on my desk, put these two together like this, so it would be kind of a, almost like the way you'd have an external keyboard for a desktop, these together like this, and when I went to go to a meeting or do something else, I would grab the iPad and go. So it's good as a desktop solution, but not really such an on-the-go solution. So put this away. And now what you start to get into are cases. So this is something from Belkin. It's called the Slim Style keyboard. And get rid of the smart cover. And the great thing with these, most of these cases, and this one in particular, is that it slides in very quickly and easily, mounts right in, and suddenly you have got essentially a laptop replacement. Now in the back here you've got a little kickstand. In theory it's adjustable, but in reality I found it's a single position. The other thing worth noting, and you probably can't see it so much from here, is that this isn't straight anymore. So from carrying it around in different ways and holding it, there's a little bit of warpage that's already occurred, and you can actually see the way that it flexes. I don't know, perhaps you can't in there. So this one, what I found was happening was as it would sit there and warp, it was getting a little spongy. So that's the Belkin Slim Style. It's a good keyboard, it is light, and it's relatively inexpensive, like $79 or so. Now, I'm not going to mount this in each and every one with the iPad, but what I'll show is just a couple others. So here's something from Logitech. It's called the Fabric Skin keyboard, and it's a folio. Now this one is interesting because your iPad, I guess I'm going to go ahead and make myself a liar and just take this, and because it slides right in. Yeah, sure it does. Well, it did earlier. slides right in, more or less, and becomes one with this. And it's not going anywhere. So I've got it in there, and it is mounted on there, and there's a button replacement that allows you to turn it on and off. And then you have this keyboard. Now the thing with this keyboard, to just be very clear, is it is not good. So you really can't see, but these are little squishy buttons. So there is a physical element as there is underneath here, but you've got a uniform skin across the entire system. Pairs up just as easily, and in fact it paired up probably easier than anything else I've done. I didn't have to enter a funky code or anything like that. It just connected, paired up right away. So, but it's terrible keyboard. Slim, light, still use the camera, access to everything nice and easy, and importantly also for some people is you can put a stylus right into this little loop. Next up is a product from Kensington called the Keyfolio Pro, and I actually had to look to see what it was called. If it looks a little bit thick and bulky to you, I would estimate that it weighs about almost twice as much as the Logitech. In fact, it weighs about as much as the iPad, and also about, again, half again what this Belkin weighs. It's a bulky setup. So you do have a magnetic loop that holds it closed. Your iPad, in this case, slides in the top and is held in place there. Access to camera, access to microphones, buttons, and so on and so forth. So you've got access to everything. On the bottom, you have a keyboard that, again, seems to have a nice physical element to it, but I found it to be rather clicky, clunky, not so great. The other thing, perhaps even as annoying as the keyboard, was you can see perhaps a couple little magnetic elements there. Those are kind of fastening, and when I say kind of, it's because it's not so great. So you've got this in here, a lot of flex, I didn't find it all that satisfying. I didn't find that it really held it all that well. A lot of flopsiness to it. Also, to power off, you actually have to push a button here. And that button is very recessed. And just to contrast, there's a physical switch which is relatively small, but very accessible right along the top of this unit and along here. As soon as there are magnetic elements here, as soon as those go off of here, you'll notice there's a little tiny light above here. It just auto switches off. So, bring me to the last one. This is from Belkin, called the Ultimate, the Coda Ultimate. And if you take a look, it is thin, it is very light, and I am going to take the time to go ahead and put this in. And so to put it in, I'll just take this, slide it, snap it, it's in, it's done. Now, there are lines on each side, and those are essentially magnetic lines. There are magnets along here, snaps in place, and your keyboard is on. This is a rigid plastic bottom along here, so that means that unlike the other Belkin, there's no flex, there's no warpage or anything like that. And because the majority of this is solid, it means that your positioning on the keyboard with where the iPad magnetizes there is also deterministic. This is not totally solid, but it provides a good amount of, even just in my hand, it doesn't flex nearly as much as the one from Kensington did. So, but most importantly, what I found is if you're reading stuff on the blog, then it was written here. It was written not in this particular app, but it was written on this keyboard. I use this thing like a laptop. And so the minute that I detach here, flip it over, suddenly I've got something that is thin, light, and very easily carryable, and it comes with me to all my meetings, work stuff. Comes with me everywhere that I go. This is, of course, on the more expensive side. This one is $129 compared to the $79 the other Belkin, but this one I would recommend wholeheartedly. It's got a real deterministic setup. It really it works. It's got an excellent keyboard, the best of any of these other keyboards. So in terms of worst to best, this one I'm not sure the exact price, and I'll figure it out, put it with the blog post, but I wouldn't recommend this anyway. It's thin and light, and it's kind of stylish. It looks pretty decent, but it's got an awful keyboard. Next up, the Kensington has got a decent keyboard, but it is a really bulky thing. And what I found when I was typing on it, even though the spacebar, you can hear it clicking away, whether or not it produced a space, you know, you could do enough that you'd think that you had pressed it, but I didn't always get the spacebar, I didn't always get the key presses. Found that I was making tons of mistakes. And what happens in iOS is when you're using an external keyboard, it switches off autocorrect so that you're stuck with whatever you did. And then this one, this is, until I used the Belkin Ultimate, this Belkin Slim Style was the best keyboard cover I'd ever used. And it still has a really satisfying keyboard, a little funky arrangement in some of the keys, but it works very, very well. But ultimately, the one that I would recommend is Belkin Ultimate. So I'll put some info on that, and these are cases. I'm not, selling anything. I'm not. So this would be the one I'd recommend, just based on my personal use. These are all good keyboards. If you ever used a keyboard cover for an earlier iPad, and we actually had the chance to use one, I can't remember who made it. There was one that was flexible, and I don't want to misname somebody because it was an abomination. And really, one of the reasons that I used this Apple keyboard and used this one was because until recently, really I think around the time of the iPad 3-4 time, about a year ago, keyboard covers were total crap. Now all of a sudden, we have, even what I call the worst of this is better than anything you could have gotten 2 years ago. So they've come a really long way, but something has to be, the best and the worst. So the compromises here made a mediocre keyboard. The kind of stylishness of this makes it bulky. This one, in order to get nice, slim, and light, has made it a little bit too flexible. And really, this one, you're paying the price. So this one is the most expensive, and you get the highest quality. But for me, for the iPad Air, which I use all the time, it's worth it. It's a great keyboard. So thanks for watching, and thanks for reading the blog.